big story, the international story, perhaps the only international story at the moment, and there are a lot of international stories in the wake, particularly of the Air India crash and the wake of the assassination of elected members of the US at the moment as well. Two Democrat state politicians shot to death in Minnesota. There are a lot of other stories happening as well. Gaza continues to maintain. And obviously the Ukrainian war is continuing apace. But now there is something else to occupy our particular attention. It is, of course, the Iranian-Israeli conflict in which Israel, 72 hours ago now, roughly, decided in an audacious preemptive strike to target Iranian facilities associated with the potential production of nuclear weaponry for that particular Islamic regime. To join us to talk about this, what it all means, where we are right now and where we're going, the relative military capacities of both countries, I guess give us a much better insight into what's actually happening. We're joined by one of the leading military analysts, not just of Britain, but also of, frankly, the Western world. And Sean Bell, former Air Vice Marshal, joins us now. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the time. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much. I hope I live up to that introduction.
Well, you do, my friend. Your pedigree, your CV is outstanding. Listen, mate, give us a hand here. Israel attacks after, obviously, the Iranian nuclear capacity, which is still nascent, it would appear, after a poor report from those who are responsible for overseeing whether or not it is, in actual fact, doing what its international obligations suggest it is. And then Iran's now back into a whole series of tit-for-tat missile strikes. First question of you. Can Israel really deal to the Iranian nuclear threat, given that I would imagine many of their facilities are a long, long, long way underground?
Yeah, so it's a simple question, but I think you have to almost wind the clock back 2 or 3 years. I think Israel has been sees the Iranian nuclear threat as an existential threat to their
Yeah,
country. They've
yeah.
watched the international community use diplomatic means to try to slow or stop the Iranian production, and the conventional wisdom is that Iran is not there yet, but it has got closer and closer. There is a widespread belief that Iran is close to now having the ability to make 7 or 8 bombs, but hasn't weaponized. And I think what's happened is Israel's finally gone. If we don't stop it now, eventually, when Iran has a bomb, not if it does, then we'll be in big trouble. And they've seen a window of opportunity. The Hezbollah, one of the sort of the arms of Iran, has been badly damaged. And I think what Israel's done is probably for the last couple of years has been doing military planning to work out how the hell they would tackle the nuclear capability of Iran. Because as you say, some of it, Iran knows that it's going to be targeted, so it's put a lot of it deep underground where it's incredibly difficult to target. But I'm an ex, fighter pilot. You give me a challenge, I'll solve it. There is a way of taking out that stuff underground, but it just needs a lot of air superiority so that you don't have any chance of being shot down. And then you keep plugging away with bunker busters in the same hole, and gradually you'll work your way down through the levels. So I think Israel wouldn't have embarked on this if they didn't genuinely believe that they had a chance of setting back the program. And what we've seen so far is, I think, audacious, but demonstrates the huge planning that they've not only rolled back the air defenses of one of the biggest military powers in the region, they're also now operating with air dominance with their F-35s over the capital city. Just imagine if Russian aircraft were operating over your capital city, how intimidating that might feel.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. To fly, you're absolutely right. You're talking about the air superiority, which they appear to have. Does Iran not have an air force?
It does, and I think Iran probably felt it had quite a credible air force. But let's unwind a little bit. Iran has a very large army, but one might argue that's enough to keep the regime in power as it is to fight its enemies. Its air force it's got F-14 Tomcats, American
Yeah,
aircraft. They're pretty
yeah.
good. It's got MiG-29s. They're pretty good. But as you probably know, it's one thing having a good aeroplane. It's quite another whether it's got a good radar, a good electronic warfare system, a good missiles, and the like. And I think what's been telling is we've not seen any Iranian aircraft fighter jets over Israel, and we've also seen
Mm,
no Iranian fighter jets going up and trying to take on the F 35s. Now, if that was your country, you'd expect your warriors of the air to get airborne
I
and
would.
fight the enemy.
Yeah.
So the fact they've not is quite telling.
It is. Listen, I was just mentioned when I introduced this topic to listeners at the start of the hour. Iran's been helping the Russian war effort for the last 3 years with a great deal of munitions and technology as well. I think it's the Shahed drone and things like that. Might they also be degraded because they have been providing so much assistance in that direction?
There might be, but if you look at right, let's look at the sort of support they've been giving Russia. You mentioned Shahed drones. They are relatively cheap and cheerful, relatively plentiful supply. And if reports are to be believed, actually, Russia is manufacturing them themselves. And frankly, drones flying from Iran for the first night after Israel conducted its attack, Iran launched 100 of these drones. The trouble is, it's about 1,000 miles. Those drones
Mm,
travel about 150 miles an hour, so it's going to take
mm.
about 6 hours to get there, and you can pick them off along the way. Those out. So, quite frankly, they are a relatively futile effort. What Iran needs to be doing is using ballistic missiles because they're a lot more difficult to shoot down. Now, they allegedly have around 2,000 of those. They're also producing them as fast as they can produce them. And by all accounts, they've also been helping Russia out with a few of those. I suspect that what we're seeing at the moment is Iran wants to demonstrate to Israel that it can fight back, but it's also aware that basically it's incredibly vulnerable now. So, do you use all your missiles up and then leave yourself completely exposed, or do you basically suck it up as far as you can and live to fight another day and hope that Israel is only focused on the nuclear capability and not focused on regime change?
Well, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu's saying. He says he wants the Iranian people to rise up, overthrow the Islamic Republic and the Ayatollah, and for some sort of spontaneous democratic revolution to occur. How realistic is that?
Well, I'd probably ask you that question. You're a seasoned campaigner in this space. As a military guy, I'd say it's highly unlikely that air power is going to lead to an implosion of the regime in Iran.
Mm.
Highly unlikely. You are not going to take out the very large army that's there. You're not going to take out the repression that's there. Are you going to contribute to a reduced confidence in the ruling authority there? Maybe, but I don't think that's remotely credible. I don't think, and besides, actually, if you look at this objectively, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other regional powers probably see Iran as a bit of a black sheep of the family, and it's probably in all of their interests for Iran not to get nuclear weapons. However, if Iran was to suffer a regime change, I suspect most of the, I've worked in the UAE, I've worked in Saudi, they're also not democracies. They also will
No,
be
it's
very
correct.
keen to avoid any
Yeah,
suggestion of an Arab Spring sweeping
yeah,
through. So I suspect
yeah.
their support for regime change would be very limited.
Yeah, yeah, that's my assessment too. Listen, they've got to fly the Israeli jets for these attacks across Iraqi airspace. That's the country in between them and Iran. The Iranians, in the last wee while, have just been asking the Iraqis to close their airspace. I don't know what that means. What do you see as occurring in that particular area? And could the Iraqis, if the Israelis said no anyhow?